GDP as at first quarter of 2025. This effort came yet again as a result of the rebasing of the economy. According to the National Bureau of Statistics (NBS), Nigeria gross domestic product grew by 3.13% year-on-year in real terms in the first quarter of 2025. However, the growth showed a remarkable improvement from the 2.27% growth recorded in the first quarter of 2024, and this reflected and also continued resilience of the economy, underpinned by strong performances in the services and industry sectors. In nominal terms, GDP rose to 94.05 trillion in the first quarter of 2025 from 79.51 trillion in the first quarter of 2024, representing a year-on-year increase of 18.30%, and product grew by 3.30% year-on-year in real terms in the first quarter of 2025. This latest figures follow the successful rebasing of Nigeria's national account to 2019 prices from the previous 2010 basis year, which the NBS says is necessary to ensure that the national account reflects a more accurate and current picture of the structure of the economy. And rebasing is a process of updating an old base year with a recent one to reflect changes in the prices of goods and services produced within the economy. Although the Nigeria's rebased economy has indeed shown spike in growth through the GDP, but the country still faces significant challenges in achieving its economic potential. Meanwhile, the nation has also remained the fourth largest economy in Africa despite the rebasing exercise that expanded the country's gross domestic product. In regard to a recent report from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, South Africa remains the continent's biggest economy with a GDP of $410.34 billion for a country with little over a quarter of Nigeria's population. Following the Southern African nation is Egypt with a GDP of $347 million, while Algeria maintains its third position, having $268.9 billion as the size of its economy. Although Nigeria's economy grew 30% above the projected $188 billion estimated by the IMF this year, the rebasing was poised to place the economy as the biggest in Africa. And now on Perspective today, we have an economic analyst in the house in person of Mr. Marcel Okeke, who will be helping us to dimension issues around the rebasing of the economy this morning. Mr. Marcel Okeke is an economic analyst, a former chief economist of Zenith Bank PLC, and also the lead consultant and CEO, Mascot Consult and Communications Limited. It's a pleasure to have you on the floor this morning, Mr. Marcel Okeke.
Thank you very much for having me on this program this morning.
Right, you're welcome. Let's get on the conversation. This morning. What is your general assessment of the state of the economy in the light of many recent developments? For example, the drop in inflation, the relative stability in forex, recent reduction in pump price, among others. Are we beginning to see ray of hope at all?
Okay, thank you very much for this question. I hope you're hearing me clearly.
Of course, loud and clear.
Very good. Well, you have mentioned those figures. There's what is called in economics, growth without development. Growth without development. Those figures you mentioned are just mere statistics, okay? But you cannot achieve development without growth. So maybe we are beginning to take the very first necessary steps. But as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing yet to celebrate. Because when you talk about inflation, you mentioned dropping. Remember that the consumer price index, that is the way of measuring inflation rate, has been rebased. Okay? So it is that rebasing that brought inflation rate from almost at 5% as at end December 2024 to the 22.22% we are talking about as a June ending. So is that rebasing? So it's a matter of changing of methodology, and updating, some data, that brought us to the 22.22 we are talking about. But in real terms, are people better off? You talk about development when people start getting better off. In other words, the overall improvement in the economy begins to reflect in the well-being of the people. The value of your currency begins to go up, and your money begins to have what? Because whether you like it or not, the quality of life of every nation or people everywhere is a direct function of the worth of their currency, the strength of their currency. You understand? So when you look at these things in their entirety, in its totality, you find out that, well, inflation has gone down, inched down. You talked about stability. Stability at what level? And in what time dimension? And so on and so forth. So, but we can only tell the government and encourage government, to continue with some of the things they are doing, so that the economy is effectively pulled out of the wood. As it is now, I cannot begin to clap that the economy is already out of the wood. And you know that much. Thank you.
Oh,
That's where I
thank you
stop.
for that. Okay, that's a thank you for that. Let's move on. In another new development, the National Bureau of Statistics recently announced a 3.3 growth in the gross domestic product as the first quarter of 2025, following the rebasing of the economy. Is the rebasing the overall interest of Nigeria, and what does Nigeria stand to benefit from the initiative? Please, what's your standpoint on this?
Well, thank you very much. Again, it's like comparing orange and apple. The figure for this quarter that you are quoting is as a result of the rebasing of our GDP. Yes, rebasing is good, but you can no longer effectively compare it with what it was in the first quarter last year. Because when you rebase, it's like updating the statistics, updating the figures and all that. And that's why you change what is called base year. The base year for the first quarter that you're mentioning the figure is now 2019, I think, as against what it was. Okay? So because of that rebasing and bringing in some new sectors of the economy that were not being effectively covered in the old methodology. Okay, that's what rebasing is all about. And so with that updating, they have now come up with the figure of 3 or so percent growth of the economy in the first quarter. So with those alterations that brought us the result we are quoting, it's not the same thing as the factors that determined the outcome in the first quarter last year. Now, talking about the benefit, essentially you and I, as individuals, we don't have much to benefit, from those figures that are being, flaunted all over the place to give credit to government. It is the policymakers, and it goes back to government itself and its agencies, that have to use those things in further policy making or policy adjustment and alteration. Is also investing global people from outside Nigeria that could now look at those figures, to compare Nigeria with some other parts of the world to see, which sectors to go into, which sectors are growing really in Nigeria and which sectors are not growing. Maybe some serious local investors could also look at those figures to say, okay, so this subsector or sector is so significant, in the composition of our GDP. Okay, let me go and invest in that area. Some people can also decide, to whittle down their own investment in subsectors as a result of what the rebasing has come up with, and so on and so forth. But you and I, as individuals, it doesn't put any kobo in our pocket, neither does it put anything necessarily on our table So that is the way it is. But it is good that the economy is rebased. Is something that is accepted, all over the world. That the economy be rebased, maybe once in a decade or once in 5 years. It's like an updating, so that the Nigerian economy is kind of updated. And I believe that the National Bureau of Statistics must have done so according to global standard. That is where I stop for now. Thank you.
All right, that's a brilliant one. Let's diverse a bit now. Let's look into the structural challenges. What structural challenges do you think are hindering Nigeria economic growth, and how can they be addressed?
When you talk about the structure of the Nigerian economy, for example, you know that Nigeria over the years has been described as largely a monoproduct economy. Monoproduct economy, what that means is that our income, especially foreign exchange inflow, comes necessarily almost entirely from the sale of crude oil. Okay? And so when the economy is dependent on one product like that, it is exposed to the whims and caprices of forces beyond our control. It also means that whatever happens to crude oil market or price in the international market, affects us either negatively or positively per time, irrespective of the direction we want our economy to go. You understand? That is one. Two is that there has been this issue of poor infrastructure, in Nigeria. And every government will be mounting it, that they are improving infrastructure, constructing infrastructure here and there every day. You find out that Nigeria, compared to some other parts of the world, is far, far, far behind, when it comes to infrastructure. Look at electricity, for example, take it as one. Energy, okay? You find out that some parts of the world, you have hundreds of thousands of kilowatts, being produced. Here you are talking about 5,000, with a population of over 200 million persons. So when you want to do business here, the epileptic nature of power supply is enough to put somebody away. Okay, so this structure of the economy has become a structural thing. So it's not conducive. It makes Nigeria uncompetitive, vis-a-vis the rest of the world. Okay, and also talking about the structure of the Nigerian economy. The economy for a long time, was cash-based, a structural thing, until recent times when the federal government started pursuing a cashless economy and all that. And I think we're getting somewhere in that regard. Okay, and so on and so forth. So with all this and the massive unemployment rate, again, the government had to, through the National Bureau of Statistics, change the methodology for calculating the rate of unemployment, and said we have come down to 4.5% or something like that. But at a point, using the old method, we were approaching almost 40 to 50% of unemployment. And even without those figures, a blind person can see that so many people that are coming out of high institutions, universities and all that, many of them are either roving the streets or joining the Japa phenomenon and leaving the country. So it's a structural thing that we produce so many graduates, and there are no job spaces, to accommodate them. And so many people either run out of the country or begin to engage themselves in what is called underemployment, whereby somebody like as a graduate, a university graduate, we take to manning a POS in one corner like that. So we become a taxi driver somewhere, or keke driver, or Okada driver, Okada rider, all over the place. That's what you see all over the place. So these people, or such persons, are underemployed, and it's a structural thing. How do you structure our educational system so that we'll be able to largely absorb our product, and so on and so forth? Then also talking about structure of the Nigerian economy, you find out that there is this so much importation they test a huge percentage of the Nigerian populace, have tests for foreign goods, So even if you produce locally here, they always want to consume what is coming from outside. And that is because of the petrodollar, the money that we are getting, in quote, easily from the export of crude oil. So people now want to use it to be importing foreign goods, most of the time. But I think the government is trying to take some steps in that regard to begin to change, the way of living by such Nigerians. And that is what I think is contained in Nigeria first, by making Nigerians to consume what we produce and producing what we consume and so on and so forth. So those are some of the structural issues, that I can now mention on this program. Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Marcelo Keke, you have, after viewing the structural challenges, what policies can be implemented to improve the business environment and attract investment in Nigeria?
Thank you. It does follow that if some of these challenges I have mentioned are deliberately, intentionally, handled, then the reverse situation will be arrived at. For example, the issue of power supply. Okay, if the government does anything concrete in that regard to ensure almost power available 24 hours of the day, or even 20 or 18 hours or 16 hours steady in that regard. You now see people who will come and they know that that challenge has been taken off. You know that that condition has been improved. And so they'll be thinking about other things. Okay? But at the foundation of all this should be the issue of security or insecurity, depending on how you put it. The government should do everything humanly possible to ensure the safety of life and property. Okay? As we speak now, the security situation is becoming an existential challenge. Okay? So no business person, thrives in an environment of insecurity. So that is one challenge the government must tackle head on, seriously. So when that is tackled, I have also mentioned the issue of power. Okay? Then you talk about infrastructure generally. Okay? If it is the ports, the government should do everything to upgrade our ports and make sure they are very functional and competitive. Okay? Then the issue of exchange rate. Okay? They should do things to make sure that our naira is not only strengthened against other currencies, especially the dollar, but also stable. Okay, so that businesses can plan, when exchange rate is stable. You understand? And so on and so forth. That's what I have to say for now.
Mm. Now let's get back to a line and let's take it back to 2014. Nigeria did the same under President Jonathan Goodluck in 2014, and the Nigerian then became the largest economy in Africa and 26th in the world then. But not so now. Are we making progress as a nation, or are we, or the progress is not intact?
Okay, thank you. And that is why you remember that when we started, I told you there's nothing to make us begin to clap yet. I told you that. And so you can now see that while we did the rebasing in 2014 and came out with the result that Nigeria is really the giant of Africa and the largest economy, we have done the rebasing now. And arrived at what? What did we arrive at? We arrived at Nigeria being in the fourth place, behind, I think, South Africa, Egypt, and Morocco, Algeria, or something like that. Algeria. Thank you, Algeria. So you can see Nigeria has done the rebasing now and become the fourth economy. Okay? So when you are the fourth economy in any competition, who talks about the fourth person? You talk about the very first person. You talk about the second. You talk about the third and give them prizes and awards. But not the fourth person that we have become now. Okay? And now when you look at that our fourth position, you see that there are forces, there are factors that brought us to that fourth position. Okay, that we are there because of the challenges I mentioned to you. One is the insecurity in the land. One is the macroeconomic instability. Okay, the next one is very poor infrastructure that makes Nigeria business environment uncompetitive, among other factors. You understand? So it means that the outcome we have through this rebasing is a clarion call, for government to up its ante in terms of what to do to get this economy developing faster. You understand? We are flouting 3 point something percent growth rate in a country that has population growth rate of about 3%. Okay, so when population is growing at almost the same level with the economy itself, what are you talking about? Okay, so really, the government has a lot to do, in order to either come to third or come to second or to come to first. Look at the issue of PMS, fuel. You know, do you know how much that this economy fritters away through importation of refined products? Okay, do you know how much has been sunk into the so-called repairing of our public refineries in Nigeria over the years, several billions of dollars? These are the things. Okay, so as long as we keep importing and frittering away our hard-earned, foreign exchange, the economy will not be stable. Okay, we'll be exposing ourselves to avoidable expenses. Okay, that is also why the government is constrained in terms of funding and goes almost everywhere to borrow. So when certain things are settled and certain things are certain within the economy, government will not have any need to go to keep borrowing, because you know the meaning of borrowing, you know the implication, because you have to pay. So yes, the outcome of the rebasing is good, but you can now see where he has placed us. So government has to be more realistic than ever before, so that Nigeria's economy can seriously and meaningfully be pulled out of the wood. I stop there for now. Thank you.
Mm. Uh, Thank you so much, Mr. Marcel Okeke. You making reference to the position of Nigeria and as well endorsed by the news. How can Nigeria leverage its position as the fourth largest economy in Africa to promote regional economic integration and cooperation?
Well, promoting regional economic development and integration, it has a political dimension. It also has diplomatic dimension. You understand? Uh, Even right from our home here in West Africa, you know what has been happening in the ECOWAS sub-region, in recent times, where many of the former French uh, uh, colonies, if you like, have decided, to pull out of ECOWAS. Some of them have gotten into the hands of military juntas, who are now in charge and doing everything to completely delink their countries from the apron strings of France that used to be their colonial overlord. Okay? So in that kind of situation where you have countries, your neighboring countries pulling out of where they used to be and also decided to pull out of the ECOWAS itself. So what do you do to achieve integration? So you find out that those lofty economic ideas or ideals that are contained in the Economic Community of West African States document, will no longer be effectively implemented, because those countries that are pulled out of ECOWAS, they are looking in different directions, for global alignment and realignment, directions that are different from what used to be when they were in ECOWAS. That's a challenge. There's no magic Nigeria can now perform to achieve sub-regional integration with such countries. Okay? Because when they align with other countries or regions or bodies in the world, that are not in line with Nigeria's economic or foreign policy and all that. So you can see the divergence, and it creates problem within the sub-region. Again, you see the idea of Nigeria being the big brother, when we are the largest economy, for example, and Nigeria has the capacity and willingness, to support many of these, sorry to say, small countries around us within the ECOWAS sub-region. Now that we are a fourth, the fourth economy, what does it show? It means that we no longer have those means or those powers that we used to have, to help these countries. Okay? And when they are no longer for the Christmas, in quotes, so to speak, to them, or they see that they no longer have the economic clout, that they used to have. So do you think they will keep cooperating or collaborating with us the way they used to do? So I'm just exposing to you what the economic weakness, of having that level of GDP and being classified as a fourth economy really means in real terms for us. Because like I told you, the outcome of the rebasing is being watched by the whole world, and and then to see the meaning, how they interpret it, how they relate with it, what they stand to benefit or what they stand to lose by the Nigerian economy going down like that. Okay, so it's not enough for us to keep parading ourselves all over the place as the biggest economy that we are no longer anymore. You understand? So we have to be realistic. And being realistic, like you're saying, it now means that we have to cut our coat according to the size of our cloth, the cloth available to us. You understand? Not within our size this time. Okay? So when you begin to do that, you now begin to look inward to take care more of the domestic challenges than looking externally as a big brother to be taking care of the countries around you, and so on and so forth. And once you start doing that, those countries, for them to continue to be at the level they are or to even develop themselves, they have to also be looking around for elsewhere of people that will help them, where they will raise either grants, or loans and all that. So I'll be moving on, and no longer Nigeria. So those are the implications. And so the outcome of the rebasing has really brought Nigeria to a hard reality, that we have to face and begin to adjust a lot of things. Thank you.
Right, let's move to truth and realities. The 3.3% growth in the first quarter of the year has been commended by global funding institutions. Does the current reality in the country reflect to this growth?
It does not reflect this growth. I have told you that we arrived at the growth level being quoted for this quarter because of rebasing. Because of rebasing. Okay? It does not reflect, because when you look at the rate at which many businesses leave Nigeria, for example, we have to tell ourselves the truth. A number of organizations, major manufacturing companies have been leaving Nigeria in droves. Okay? We are giving the impression that some new ones are coming, foreign direct investment and all that. But we need to take our time and see them. Okay? And you know what it means when a new company is coming, rather than the established ones, leaving, and so on and so forth. So yes, the figure, because it's not even negative, like you have a negative rate of growth, it gives us some hope that we can move forward, but it also shows that there's a lot to be done. Because let me say this, for the 1 trillion economy that the government wants to achieve by, I think, 2030 or thereabout, this economy needs to be growing at something that should be a double digit, minimum of that being 10%. Okay? So growing at 3 point anything doesn't mean much. It only indicates to the government, to the authority, the people that matter, there's a lot of work to be done. So that's what it means. That's the implication. Thank you.
All right. You talking about implication. Let's look for the policy implication about this. What role can monetary policy in supporting economic growth in Nigeria, and how can the Central Bank of Nigeria contribute majorly to this effort? Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Please,
I say
I
I'm
can.
with you.
Okay, please. Did you get the question, or I should take it again?
Yes, I heard you about monetary policy.
Mm, yes.
Huh?
So, how can the Central Bank of Nigeria contribute majorly to this effort?
You said it through monetary policy. Monetary policy works out through what is called transmission mechanism. Okay, and that is why the people that really implement the agency or the vehicle, the conveyor, through which monetary policy works are the banks, the commercial and merchant bank. Okay, for example, if the federal government wants to expand money in circulation, it is through monetary policy that is going to indicate that they want to expand the supply of money in the economy. Like now that the CBN is fighting inflation, it is through monetary policy that is doing that. And that is why it is implementing what is called tight monetary policy. And that is why it has raised what is called the monetary policy rate from around 18% as at June 2023. We are now talking about 27.5% from November last year till date. Okay, so that indicates that when you want to borrow money, for example, from the bank, your effective rate of interest could be over 30%, just because the MPR is up to 27.5. If the government or the central bank now brings the MPR, for example, down to 25, down to 20 or so, it now means that the rate of interest the banks will be charging will certainly come down, to something like 25, to something like 23, and so on and so forth. So when that happens, people, businesses, households, individuals will now have more access to money, because interest rate is really the price of money. Okay, so when interest rate is reduced, MPR, of course, I must say, is the indicative rate. So it indicates to everybody that the government wants to operate a tight monetary environment or a accommodative one. So the high one indicates that interest rate will be high. The lower one indicates that interest rate will be lower. So the lower one will make many people have access to funding from the commercial and merchant banks, okay, especially the small and medium enterprises that are so much in number within the economy, okay. But when the MPR is high and these SMEs can no longer borrow, because if they borrow at that, is the cost, it is factored into the cost of their operation, the cost of their business, and it's like that is killing for them because it's so high. You understand? So as it is now, that is why, even though the CBN in its most recent decision has left MPR at 27.5%, a lot of economists, businesses, analysts are rather of the view that it starts coming down, bringing the MPR down so that a lot of businesses in the economy will begin to breathe, in quotes, if you like, breathe, because it will open more access to funding for them should the MPR begin to come down, something like that, as against what obtains today, and so on and so forth. So the MPR, the monetary policy overall, is constitute the major way that the Central Bank of Nigeria manages the economy or contributes in managing the economy. The other leg of it is the fiscal policy. That is how the federal government raises its own money and how it goes about spending it. But the challenge we have in this economy is that while the Central Bank of Nigeria will be operating tight monetary policy, trying to reduce the volume of money in circulation and so on and so forth, fighting inflation. The federal government, on the other side, will appear to be spending, so much and pumping so much money into the economy that it will seem to be countering what the CBN is doing. So there is need for collaboration, for harmony between the monetary policy and fiscal policy, so that this economy gets stabilized and moving in a positive direction in terms of our growth and development. Thank you.
An
Thank you.
interesting one, Mr. Marcelo Keke. Going by the current growth rate, how close is Nigeria to the $1 trillion economy it proposes to attain by 2030?
Well, thank you. I have alluded to this issue of 1 trillion economy, where I said that the 3 point something percent growth rate is not likely to take us to the 1 trillion economy we are talking about. Okay? The government has to do everything within its powers, to improve the business environment, to first of all improve on security situation in the country. One, that is one. Two is to now begin to improve the business environment by seriously and truthfully improving on the infrastructure, in Nigeria. And when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about power supply. We're talking about roads. We're talking about the rails. We're talking about the seaport. We're talking about the airport. Okay? We will also talk about the bureaucracy in running all these things I have mentioned. Because if you go to our Nigerian ports, seaports, for example, or at the airport, is a lot of that you are going through a lot of frustration in terms of trying to achieve whatever you want to achieve by going to those places, whether it's export or import or whatever. That has been our challenge. So government should look into that and then improve, the processes, by making sure that red tapes, unnecessary red tapes, are removed in these areas. Okay, so talking about 1 trillion economy is not something that we just wish and get there, so that it doesn't end up being a wishful thinking. Something concrete has to be done. As the government is borrowing, from almost everywhere in the world, it should deploy the discipline to make sure that those monies, those funds, are deployed to really improving our infrastructure and doing things in ways that will not only attract businesses, but retain businesses here. So the hemorrhage of businesses running away, has to be controlled and stopped. You understand? And stopped. And then whatever needs to be done to improve the quality of life here, because if the quality of life here is improved, the well-being of the people is improved, through the relevant economic policies, not through palliatives. Not through palliatives. You don't give palliative. It's a case of giving them fish and they eat and teaching them how to fish. So government has to kind of rejig its policies to ensure that people are equipped, to be able to participate actively within the economy and earn their living here, okay, and have decent livelihood. The token of trying to empower people in quote by giving them 5,000 naira or giving a minimum wage of 70,000, moving it from 30,000 to 70,000, does not mean much, because what is the real value of 70,000 naira, for example, now compared to when it was 30,000? Because of the exchange rate when we had minimum wage at 30,000, you find out that the 30,000 as at 2023 is worth more than the so-called 70,000 minimum wage now of 70,000. Okay, so government really has to do something so that the take-home pay of people working wherever really is able to take them home, okay, and make them live within this economy, okay, rather than people, everybody children, youth, adults, everybody wanting to leave Nigeria, through the Japa phenomenon. That has to be deliberately, controlled and deliberately blocked, so that people travel only when they have to travel and come back to a beautiful country. Okay?
All right.
So thank you very much.
Is there anything good the government is doing, and from your own standpoint, will Nigeria have a full benefit of the removal of the oil subsidy and looking out for the FX unification 2 years after they've been introduced?
Please come again.
In your own standpoint, is government doing anything anything to improve the state, and is Nigeria reaping the full benefit of the removal of the oil subsidy and the FX unification 2 years after they were introduced?
Okay. Again, thank you for this question. The fuel subsidy was removed May 29, 2023. And by mid-June, the same year, the Naira was completely floated. So the issue of calling it this harmonization of exchange rates and all that is being euphemistic. The reality is that Naira was fully floated. Okay? And then we have been seeing the outcome of those two key policies. The outcome is that the inflation rate, went sky high and has been there, irrespective of the calculation or recalculation that we are talking about now. That is what, because of that, the purchasing power of everyone within this economy nosedived terribly. The currency has gotten devalued, such that the exchange rate by 2023 mid-June, that was, or May, that was about 450 per dollar, okay, has gone down to talking about 1,600, 1,550 naira to the same $1. Do you know what that means? On the quality of life of people, on cost of doing business within the economy. Let me say this. A number of businesses that have left this country in the past couple of years, none of them did not refer to, the challenge of cost of fund and the problem of foreign exchange within Nigerian economy as reasons for them, to have left or to be leaving or to want to leave. So those are the implications. Those are the outcomes of those policies you mentioned. Okay? If, for example, when government fuel subsidy and goes ahead to activate or reactivate the local refineries here, and they begin to produce PMS, for example, and supply locally here, the situation would have been better. But government went ahead to begin to license more importers. So they keep importing, okay, refined product. The more they import refined product, the more our scarce foreign exchange is being, spent. You understand? But if they were not importing and the local refineries are working here, it means that more of our foreign exchange will not be wasted. Okay? Okay? And that will not only pump up our external reserves, okay, but will help in stabilizing the macro economy we'll be talking about. Okay? But you'll find out that it has not even been easy for local refineries to begin to function. Neither has government effectively reactivated its own refineries. Instead, those of them that are claimed to have been refurbished have all collapsed again. I'm not the one saying it. That's the reality. So with that kind of situation, it means that that sector has not been stabilized. The only refinery that we know today is Dangote Refinery that is active and producing.
But Dangote just imported 4,000 truck with this new development. Are you not saying there is no stabilization in this new development coming from the Dangote Refinery?
Do you say? Do you say it imported?
I said from the Dangote refinery. The 4,000 new compressed natural gas new development.
The thing is that it was very rough and tough for Dangote refinery to even begin to produce locally here because of some political interests and so on and so forth. So the Dangote refinery, has a very huge capacity. So what we need to say or need to do is for the government to encourage, that company and others that are in that sector or subsector so that they continue to do what they are doing rather than Nigeria depending on importation. That's the way I want to say it. So what they are doing, Dangote is doing, is very, very encouraging. And so that is why other participants or actors in that sector should also be encouraged, so that you have a competition. We will not also want a situation where we have monopoly, so that all that everybody hears everywhere is Dangote refinery and so on and so forth. So government should find a way to encourage competition. And part of what we are suggesting as analysts is that government should do everything to fully privatize, the public-owned refineries, so that they no longer will remain a drain pipe, on a government coffers. Those are the things government must do so that we begin to arrive at a comfortable position as regards, fuel supply. But then talking about the policies you mentioned, which is flotation of the naira and fuel subsidy removal and all that. Well, the government had to do a lot to curtail, to deal with the unintended consequences, because really it is the unintended consequences that government has been dealing with. You understand? And well, it's like it's getting the handle to doing that. So we just have to hope and believe that going forward, the economy will no longer be getting worse, that will rather be improving, through those indicators we are looking at. You look at the exchange rate, it's getting better. You look at the GDP, it's getting better. You look at inflation, it's getting better. You look at the employment rate, it's getting better, and so on and so forth. These are our expectations and things we look forward to. Thank you.
Interesting, Mr. Marcel Okeke. On this take, let's have your parting shot. And how can Nigeria reclaim its economic leadership position in Africa within a short time?
There's no magic about it, claiming economic leadership. You can see that when we did our rebasing, in this first quarter, we arrived at the fourth position. As we are struggling to improve, those other countries are also trying to get better on their own. You should also know that we're talking about South Africa, which we know all over the years to be a more and better developed economy. You understand? So they cannot just hold their hands and watch Nigeria come to take over as in the first position, soon. Okay? So a lot of things have to be taken care of here. First of all, I mentioned it, the issue of security has to be properly handled. Because it's only somebody that's alive, someone that's alive, someone that is secured and safe, that can embark on businesses and so on and so forth. That is one. Two is that this issue of infrastructure, government should handle it seriously, because over the years, every government comes out talking about infrastructure. We are developing infrastructure, trillions and billions being pumped into it. At the end of the day, have we really developed those infrastructure, or money is just, pumped into private pockets, or we are just deepening corruption within the system? So corruption, those are some of the things that must be taken care of. So that money, even when it is by loan that we get it, it should be deployed to the project, that is meant, to get into place, rather than being misapplied or embezzled. You understand? So by those things, the economy will begin to move in the desired direction. I don't know how soon Nigeria will come back to number one. But if we begin to do some of these things I'm mentioning, consistently, we'll be moving forward. Okay? Because whether we are number one or number two or number three, every country is in competition with the other countries of the world. The world is a global village. So every one country sees or knows what is happening in the other. there's competition. And that is why we're talking about the uncompetitiveness of our economy. So government should do everything to make the environment competitive so that businesses that come in and those who are here will keep thriving and doing well. The rest of the world will see it and more businesses will come in. Thank you.
I believe Nigeria will take its lead position in no time. Thank you so much, Mr. Marcel Okeke, for your time on this conversation this beautiful morning. I hope
Thanks for having me on this program.
We can ponder better on some other discussions and about this particular one. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on this program.
Do well to enjoy the rest of your day, Mr. Marcel Okeke. All right, having Mr. Marcel Okeke on the program today on today's perspective, you said a whole lot of things which I believe, if strictly done by the necessary bodies and the government, of course there will be changes and Nigeria will reclaim its economic leadership, taking as the lead position in Africa within a short time. Thank you so much for being there watching and viewing Perspective on Consumer Alert TV. Another beautiful edition of Perspective will be back tomorrow. Please stay well for more updates on Consumer Alert TV. I am Ire Ayomikunle. Good morning and do well to enjoy the rest of your day.
Hey there, do you know in the world today, everyone is a consumer, and as consumers, we all have the right to be heard.
In Nigeria today, as a consumer, you have all right to product information, right to fair pricing, right to return goods, right to product labeling, right to fair dealings, and a lot more.
Well then, have you heard about the new media channel?
Consumer Alert TV.
Consumer Alert TV.
Consumer Alert TV.
At Consumer Alert TV, our goal is to inform and educate consumers in Nigeria with insightful news alongside development within the fast-paced world of consumers through well-researched, specialized, and analytical content.
Our vision at Consumer Alert TV is to create an engaging platform that provides right connections for meaningful brands in Nigeria, thus creating a more caring world for consumers where business thrive.
And guess what? Our Consumer Alert brand is the first consumer complaint resolution portal in Nigeria, powered by a 72-hour feedback mechanism. We offer consumer advocacy, informative talk shows, branding promotions, advertising, and lots more. Connect with us via our YouTube channel at Consumer Alert TV. Follow us on our Facebook page, Consumer Alert TV, our Instagram page, Consumer Alert TV, and do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscription is free. Consumer Alert TV. At Consumer Alert TV, you deserve to be heard.
At Consumer Alert TV, you deserve to be heard.
All right, my name is Korede Peters, and I am a product manager. So this is a very innovative idea, and first off, everybody is a consumer, and so this is the voice of the consumer, and this is a voice that is going to be heard. For the first time, the consumers in this country are going to be able to express their ideas and to get to know your rights, to know what belongs to you. And it's going to change a lot of branding. It's going to change a lot of things, because everybody knows that we're not just getting things out for the consumers. The consumers have a right to accept. You know, as they say, the customer is always right. So the customer is the consumer, and the consumer is always right. So, you know, when there is control, when there is feedback, there is bound to be change. So so I said, I'm a product manager. When you develop products, sometimes you believe you know what the users want, and through different kinds of surveys. But when the users actually get the product, they can tell you their mind, how the product is, their feeling about the product. So it's good to definitely change how products are being designed, how services are being given to people. because you can get a feedback, and that feedback can make or mar a company, and everybody wants to have good feedback. So it's definitely going to change the behavior of people that make products. One very good thing is information. Information is power. So the consumer is going to get way more powerful. The voice of the consumer will be heard, the opinions of the consumers will be heard, and that opinion will shape how products and services will be made in this country going forward. Be on the lookout. You are now in charge. Several things coming your way through this station. I'm very excited about it. The things he's already brought out, and there will be many more things. But the bottom line, the consumer is now in the driver's seat. So Consumer Alert TV, thank you for this innovative work. You're going to keep evolving and just follow the consumers. The consumers will lead you to what they want, and that's how it's supposed to be, always. They're going to have different types of consumers, and they're going to pander to the different needs, but you are going to be making consumers very, very powerful. So thumbs up, keep up the good work. My name is Korede Peters.